Hello and welcome to the third DUNE video. As you can see, I've set up my print and play copy, which is pretty much complete at this point. So what I'm going to do is walk you through sort of a bit of how the game works. So it's primarily going to be focused on setup, but it will also show you maybe a turn of play. Now, what actually happens is you choose a faction. The Bene Jesuits makes a prediction who's going to win and when. You then pick your traitors, you get your starting money, the spice, and you then put your tokens on the board, you get your treachery cards, and then the storm is randomized where it starts. So it starts in the start location, but for the very first turn, you then randomize where it is, and that determines who is going to be the first player. Now, one of the things you do need to think about is you probably are best giving out the traitor cards before you actually put your playing pieces on the board, because, I don't know, that might influence your decision. Similarly, the Bene Jesuits should make their prediction on who's going to win before you hand out any cards, and that's actually really, really important. So I've actually sort of pre-done that. So I've decided that the guild is going to win on turn 7. And I've then deployed the various tokens around the board. So currently it's the Bene Gesserit to go first, then the Atreides, then the Emperor, Fremen, Guild, Harkonnen. But this is going to randomly move, and that will change who actually ends up going first. So let's hand out the cards. Now the first cards you hand out are the traitors. Now everyone gets dealt 4 cards, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And you have a look and you determine which card you're going to pick. So, for example, the Bene Gesserit, they're not going to want their own card, so they're not going to pick that. Duncan's looking a bit weak. Umman is looking a bit weak. So let's say they pick Fade. So that's going to be their actual traitor. They now need to remember these other traitors, because they now know that these other leaders will never be a traitor in any battle, and that's useful information. You do that for every single faction. Deal out 4 cards, pick 1. However, as you will come to know when playing DUNE, there's always an exception, and the Masters of Treachery, the Harkonnens, actually get to keep all of their cards. Now, in this situation, in some ways it's a bit unfortunate they've got their own leader. Now, this isn't a total disaster, because they now know that the Beast Raban can be used in every single combat, and that they're never going to betray them because you have that particular card. Now, there are some variants in the rules. I'm not sure if it's in the Gale Force 9 rules, where you can sort of mulligan this set of traitors, shuffle them back in, and then draw a fresh set of 4 cards. I believe if you do use that rule, you give the Harkonnen their 4 cards first. But there you go. So no need to choose. As the Harkonnen, you just get to keep all of these cards. So once each faction has got their particular traitor cards, you hand out your starting spice, and then you deploy your troops onto the board. And the player aids from the official Gale Force 9 version are really good for this. So it tells you, for example, the Fremen can put 10 forces anywhere you like amongst Sietch Tabr, False Wall South and False Wall West. And they start with 10 in reserve, and it also tells you how much starting spice they have. So these are really useful cards, plus it actually tells you your sort of rule breaking advantages that your particular faction has. And you'll notice that some of the factions have double-sided cards. So I believe it's the Fremen and the Bene Gesserit have double-sided cards. Unfortunately, all the other factions don't. So once you've done that, you've got all your troops deployed on the board. You're then ready to deal out your treachery cards. So again, there's a rule breaking faction here. Everyone gets 1 treachery cards apart from the Harkonnens, who get 2. So the Harkonnens, they're going to get poison defense and poison attack, so that's quite handy for them. The guild will get a shield. The Fremen will get a cheap hero. The Emperor will get a Karama card, which is a special card. Talk about that in a bit. A projectile weapon, the slip tip for the Atreides, and then finally the Bene Gesserit get a stunner. So again, this is where the Harkonnen are really nasty to fight. They have more traitors, they have more treachery cards, and they've also got special abilities should they win a fight as well, which makes them a really horrible foe to go up toe to toe with. So anyway, once you've done that, we then randomise the starting location. Now for the Bene Gesserit, they currently are to the right, the leading edge of the storm. So in theory, they'd be first player. However, because this is the first turn, the Harkonnen and the Bene Gesserit factions are the ones who are just either side of the storm. So they need to randomly dial in a number into the combat wheel, and that's going to move the storm that many spaces. So it's actually going to move forward 5. Now, as you can see, that's moved the storm to just to the right of the Atreides. So the Atreides aren't going first. It's the Emperor who goes first. So that's why you should really deploy your troops before doing this phase, because obviously once you know who the first player is, you might choose to deploy your forces differently. So I'm actually going to put the discs on the table. I've actually marked where I'm going to put some of the Fremen with the worm marker that I 3D printed. And then once I've done that, we're ready to actually start the first turn. So here you go, we've set up all the starting forces. So we have 5 in the Siege here for the guild, 10 in Arrakeen, 10 in Carthag, 5 in Tabor, and then 2 and 3 in the False Walls. Now at this point, everyone's got their money, everyone's deployed their forces, everyone's got their traitors, everyone's got their treachery cards. So at this point, we're ready to start playing the game. However, what I recommend if you've never played the game before is make sure you read your player aid card or your faction help sheet, whatever you happen to have, so you know what your particular faction does. It would be quite useful to have a vague idea of what the other factions can do. So the Harkonnens are treacherous and devious. The guilds can do all sorts of shenanigans with teleporting and shipping people around. The Fremen sort of pop up out of the desert. The Emperor just has loads of money and big scary troops, unless of course you're the Fremen, in which case they're not quite as scary. The Atreides and the Bene Gesserit have nasty abilities to mess with your plans or know your plans. So that's basically how the game works. So what is the point of this game? Well, that's the key thing. The standard rules are you need to control 3 strongholds by any turn to win the game. So if you're acting independently as your own faction, you get control of 3 strongholds, you win the game. If you're in an alliance, you need 4 strongholds. If you're one of the other factions, you might have a special win condition. So the guild win automatically if no one else has won. The Fremen win automatically at the end of the game if certain areas are controlled and certain other areas aren't controlled. And the Bene Gesserit win if their prediction comes true. So let's say they predict the Harkonnens to win on turn 3. The Harkonnens do win on turn 3. They go, yay, I've won. And the Bene Gesserit go, actually, no, I predicted you were going to win. So in fact, I win and you don't. So what are strongholds? Let's have a closer look at the map. So if you look at the map, you'll see it's divided into big areas. So you have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of salmon pinky orangey areas. They are what's known as strongholds, and that's what you need to win the game. So you need 3 by yourself, 4 in what's known as an alliance. There's also these darker large areas which are sort of mountainous rock regions which are safe from the storm that slowly marches its way around the planet. You've then got these light sandy areas which are vulnerable to the storm. Anything in the area of a storm gets destroyed. The polar sink, which is an ice cap and is safe from the storm and also is a safe haven. You can't fight in the polar cap or the polar sink. And then there's this special area here called the Imperial Basin. Now that is protected from the storm by this shield wall here. And this isn't here just purely for game mechanics reasons. It's actually based on the book. If you read the book, you'll find out that the shield wall protects the Imperial Basin and bad things happen to this area over here if this gets blown up. And for that, I've actually printed an overlay to demonstrate that, you know, situation changes in here once the shield wall's exploded by atomics. So the game, as I say, is about controlling these strongholds. You want to go out into the sandy areas to get spice. You want to go on the rocky areas to be protected from the storm, but it's a little bit tricksy because although the areas determine your movement, there's also these like pizza pie slice areas which are called sectors, and a storm inhabits that entire sector. So in the minor erg there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4 sectors, and you can be in the minor erg in this sector, bearing in mind the storm is currently actually here. You can also be over here, but once the storm moves on, if you're both in here, then you're going to fight each other, because if you have two factions in an area or territory, they're going to fight each other. You also might notice this weird little symbol with a number under it. That is what's known as a spice blow. That's where the spice appears from the spice deck, and that's where you need to go if you want to collect the spice. So if you're in the minor erg, you can't collect the spice from here. You literally have to actually be in that sector. This has caused a bit of debate about moving within an area and a territory. I don't think you need to worry about that too much. If you want to rule it's a movement, well, as part of your movement you just move from one part of the territory to another. Job done. You'll also notice on my copy of the map there's this white line. That's to show where the Fremen can appear. The Fremen basically live in the southern regions, and they just, march around the equator and pop up in this northern area here, and that white line determines, their access onto the board. Everyone else is up in space on board a guild spaceship, and they have to actually beam down onto the surface. They actually get on a transport and fly down. There are no teleportation devices like Star Trek. So very important, you've got your sectors, the pizza slices, then you've got your areas. Movement is by area, storm is by sector, spice is by the blow marker, and just remember at the end of the game, or to trigger the end of the game, you need to control 3 or 4 strongholds, depending on whether you're acting alone or as part of an alliance. However, there are some special rules. The guild win automatically, and effectively the Fremen win if these 2 areas over here aren't controlled by the big factions, including the Emperor, who's currently not on planet. And the only faction allowed to be in here is either, I think, the Bene Jesuits, the guild, or the Fremen themselves. Okay, so I hope you're still with me. You followed the setup process and how to play the game and how the board is set out. And this is actually, ironically, quite a simple game, but it's got lots of little exceptions and rule tweaks that make it feel much more complex. The original rulebook from 1979, I think, is only about 8 pages, but it's really dense. The modern rulebook, which you can download as a PDF, is this lovely one by Gale Force 9. And how many pages is it? It's 24, and yet there are still questions about it. As I say, at essence, the game is fairly simple, but it's got all these little tweaky bits. Now, once you're all set up and ready to go, and you're at the point I'm effectively at now, turn 1 actually begins, and as I've mentioned earlier, it's actually the Emperor to go first. So how does a turn actually work? Well, we start off with the storm phase, and in the storm phase, that's where you determine how far the storm moves. Well, as part of setup, we've done that. It was randomized to move 5 spaces. From now on, though, the Fremen get to see how far the storm's going to move, and it moves 1 to 6 under the new rules. We then go into the spice blow. Now the Atreides are aware of where the spice is going to appear, so they've got a slight advantage over other factions. And if you're playing the advanced rules, you actually end up with 2 spice blows. Under the basic rules, you have 1. We then move on to the bidding phase, where you bid for treachery cards. We then have the combat phase, the movement phase. Then we have the combat phase, then we actually collect the spice. Now, in the new rules, they've actually created some extra icons for some sort of like mini steps in the turn. So during the spice blow, that's where you can claim just after that and before the bidding phase for what's known as Chome Charity. So anyone with less than 2 spice can claim Chome Charity, and they will get up to 2 spice. So if you've got 1 spice, you'll get 1 free spice. If you've got 0 spice, you can get 2 free spice. The Bene Jesuits break that rule. They can always claim charity, so they always get 2 spice. Once we've gone through the bidding phase, we then get to this phase, and just before you move, you have what's known as a revival phase, where you get dead out of the tanks. Then you have a 2-stage movement. The first thing you do is you come onto the planet. So if you're Fremen, you appear somewhere inside this white line. If you're anyone else, you beam down from the guild's spaceships. And that's how the guild gets a lot of money, to be honest. In fact, the Emperor gets a lot of money from bidding, or the bidding phase, I should say. Once we've done all the movement, we then check to see if there's any combat. And that's where the battle wheels and the treachery cards come into play. And then you gather spice, and that's it. Now, there are some extra little wrinkles. So people who control these 2 locations, they get special income, they gather more resources, and they can move further. And the smugglers hideout over here, you get some extra money. So we'll cover those when we get into detail on the actual phases. And that's basically how a turn works. You go through all your turns, and as I say, in the new version of the rules, at turn 10, the game automatically ends and you check for win conditions. A popular variant, if you're playing the old rules, which played to 15 turns, was to end the game randomly between turns 7 and 10, so the game didn't run too long. And 7's a pretty good stopping point, because it means I think it's the spice deck has been gone through at least once, and that way the game doesn't drag out and overstay its welcome. So anyway, there you go. That's a very brief overview of how to play. So at this point, you could actually play the game. We've gone through setting up. So you place your figures, you randomise the storm, you hand out your cards, you give out the money, and then we've gone through the phases. So let's actually play the first turn to give you a bit more of an idea. And forgive me if I make any errors, because I'm now about to try and play 6 players at once. So bear with me. Now, as I mentioned, normally the first phase of the game would be the Storm deck. So this gets shuffled by the Fremen player. They check the first card so they know how far the Storm's going to move. So if this was a subsequent turn, we'd flip it over and the Storm would move 1. And you'll see that it's actually every number from 1 to 6. Once they've moved the Storm, they reshuffle the deck. And then they would check the top card. And because I didn't shuffle it very well, it's 1. Let's say it's actually a different number. So next turn it would actually move 4. So the Fremen have a big advantage of knowing how far the Storm's going to move, and it's randomised every turn. So I do recommend you think about sleeving these cards. They're going to get shuffled a lot every single turn, and there's only 6 of them, so it's not too arduous to actually get those all sleeved up. So the Storm moves, and wherever it lands, it eats everything that's out in the open. So anything on a sandy territory, whether it's spice or a unit token, which are, just to remind you, these little discs, they get eaten alive. Now again, the Fremen, they're very good at surviving in the desert, so they don't actually get totally eaten. So that's something that you need to keep an eye out on your faction card for. They basically lose half of their number, and I believe it's rounded up. So if you've got 15 guys there, they lose 8 and keep 7. So that's a really nice feature for the Fremen. So that's Storm movement. Well, we skip that in the first turn. So we then go to Spice Blow. Now, the Atreides actually know what the first card is. If you're playing the advanced rules, you'd have a double Spice Blow. And what you do is you flip it over and you place the amount of spice equal to the region. So in Wind Pass North, we're going to get 6 spice. So we simply select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spice, and we place that on the relevant location on the map. So on the card, it actually gives us an idea of where it is, and as long as you've got your card aligned to your map, it becomes pretty obvious that that's where the spice is going to be. So there are 2 sectors in this area, so if I'm in this area, I can't actually collect the spice. And that's something I struggled with when I first read through the rules, but rereading the rules, checking other playthroughs, etc., that is correct. That's how you should play the game as far as I can tell. If anyone has a counter argument, put it in the comments and it can be debated. Now, if you're playing the advanced variant, you would then flip over this card. And this is a little bit controversial because one of the problems the game can have is you can actually end up with not enough spice in the game. So the double spice blow is a good way of getting more money into the game, because spice in the world of DUNE is currency. It's the most important thing in the universe. So some people like to play the double spice variants. However, this can put too much money into the game. So if I was to flip it, you'd see we'd get another location spawn in, and that would add 6 spice. Now the advantage of the double spice blow is it gives you multiple locations to try and go and get spice. So I quite like it, but the problem is in the new version of the rules, you then have to play advanced combat, which I don't like. So there are different variants out there talking about do half spice blows. So one variant I'm thinking of trying is play the first spice blow normally and then do a second spice blow at half the amount. So I would, for example, here put 3 out. Well, I'm not actually going to play that variant, so I'm just going to discard this card. So what I'm going to be playing here when I'm showing you the game is actually all the rules apart from the advanced rule part where it talks about double spice blow and advanced combat. So I will mention them, but I'm actually, as part of this playthrough, going to pretend those 2 rules don't exist for now. So just be aware of that. There is a basic and an advanced set of rules. In the basic rules, you have 1 spice blow. In the advanced rules, you have a double spice blow. And there's lots of arguments out there about doing variations. And this is one thing you will find with DUNE. Lots of people have their own little house rules and stuff like that. And I'm trying to show you that the rules as written in Gale Force 9, or at least mention where I'm departing from the base rules. Once we've done that, we then check who can bid on treachery cards. And at this point, this is where you can claim Chome Charity. So the Bene Jesuits automatically could claim Chome Charity. However, this is the first turn of the game. There is no Chome Charity in the first turn of the game, so they can't do that. But normally the Bene Jesuit could claim 2 money for no reason, just because why not? Other factions have to have less than 2 spice to do that. So at that point, we're then ready to bid on treachery cards. So we check everyone's hand size, and the maximum treachery cards you can hold is 4. If you've got more than 4, well, you've cheated. You can only get up to 4. Unless, of course, you excel at treachery. Yes, our friends Harkonnens are back to break the rules again. They can hold a total of 8 cards. So everyone at this stage of the game can bid. So there's 6 players. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these are the 6 cards we're going to bid on. Now, in this phase, the Atreides have what's known as limited prescience. So they can check the next card. So they can look secretly at this card and go, this is a shield. This is useful. This will protect you against projectile weapons. So they might decide to sell the information about this. And this is one way the Atreides get money, is rather than go out and look for spice, they can sell the information that they gather via their limited prescience. And basically, we check who the first player is going to be. Well, it's the Emperor. So the Emperor would bid on this first. Then it goes round, and once everyone's passed, whoever's got the highest total wins this card. Whoever wins this card pays the Emperor. Now, if the Emperor wins this card, they pay the bank. And that's typically how the game works. If you pay someone, that person, if they win, they have to pay the bank. So why would you want a shield? Well, you might want a shield to protect yourself against a stunner or a slip tip. So each weapon has its own defense. So you've got projectile weapons, projectile defenses, you have poison weapons, poison defenses, and then you've got special cards. There is one special card, though, called the lasgun. And if anyone gets that, it's really powerful, because a lasgun under the sort of universe of DUNE is very dangerous in the presence of shields. And because of that, lasguns aren't normally used in the universe of DUNE, because if a lasgun touches a shield, it creates a sort of electromagnetic feedback and generates effectively an atomic blast that kills everyone for, several meters. So yeah, in the game of DUNE, if you play a lasgun and someone plays a shield, it kills everyone in that area. Literally everyone. It's absolutely devastating. And of course, this is where the game ends up with a slight dissonance, because you can't use shields on DUNE because the worms get attracted to a shield and eat you. However, from a game point of view, a shield works great thematically, so don't worry about it too much. But yeah, shields are needed to protect you against projectiles. Now you might remember from the Harkonnens, let me just grab those cards quickly, there is also a poison weapon and a poison defense. I think there's only one form of poison defense, and it's the snooper, and then you've got various poisons, so the chamakura or chaumurki. Anyway, these cards can only be played if you have a leader, and every round you have to play a leader, to be honest. There are also special cards in the deck, so the Kurama and the Cheap Hero, you'll notice, are special cards, and they can be really powerful. Now the Kurama card is really, really good. It allows you to do various things. If I remember correctly, you can automatically win a treachery card bid. You can force one other faction to not use their special power. Was there something else? I'm sure there was something else. Also, under the advanced rules, a Kurama card has a once per game, I believe it's been ruled, so once per game special effect. So you can play this either as a standard Kurama card, or you can play your once per game special effects. Now the Bene Jesuits don't have a special effect for the Kurama card. Instead, they can play what's known as worthless cards as Kurama cards. So in this deck that we're about to bid on, there are worthless cards. Let me have a quick look. No, we don't have any worthless cards to bid on, but I believe they're also green. So anyway, we're all now going to bid on this. We go round. You either pass or bid one higher than the current bid, or more if you want. I mean, I could bid 1, and then the next player could bid 5, and then the next player bid 8, and then everyone would go, oh, that must be a good card, I get it. Now the Atreides, as I say, can sell this information, and under the new rule book, for the bidding phase, each faction only has 10 seconds to bid or pass, and if they don't do either, they're assumed to have passed. Now the reason for that is this particular phase can take a very long time to get through, and if you watch the very good, I think it's MCDM playthrough videos, I think there's 3 now on YouTube, they're really, really good, but you will notice the treachery phase can really drag out. Now I'm not sure I 100% agree with the 10-second bidding rule, because it does mean you are taking something away from the players in doing all the negotiation and everything. But yeah, it's there for a reason, to try and keep the game ticking along. So anyway, let's say the Emperor decides he's not sure if he wants this, so he just says, oh, I'll bid 1. The Fremen, they don't have much money. They might pay 1, let's say, to the Atreides to find out what this is. Then they might think, well, actually, I could do with a shield, so they bid 2. The Guild bid 3, well, that's the Fremen out. Then it goes around to the Harkonnen. Now, the Harkonnen really want this because they get all sorts of special stuff when they win cards. So they maybe bid 5. Everyone else passes. The Harkonnens win with 5. So they take their 5 spice and they pay that to the Emperor. So the Emperor is now on 15 spice. He's very wealthy. This card goes to the Fremen, to the Harkonnens. But the Harkonnens have a special ability. Every time they bid successfully on a treachery card, they get a free treachery card. And the Atreides don't get to see this card. Let's just show you. Oh, it's a worthless card. It's a trip to Gamont. So these just clog up your hand and are a pain. But they're nice to have every now and then, because you can bluff, oh, I'm playing this card, I'm going to kill your leader. So they put in a rubbishy leader and you go, ha, it's a trip to Gamont. Enjoy. Anyway, that was the Emperor. So we check, can the Emperor bid? Yes, he can. Well, he normally would be the first player, but he's already been the first player in this round. So we move round to the next player, which is the Fremen. Fremen can bid. We check everyone can bid, and basically everyone can. So the Fremen bids, but the Atreides gets to look first. Well, it's a Kurama card. Fremen bid 1. The Guild bid, let's say, 3. The Harkonnens, they're not sure. Okay, I'll go 5. The Atreides says to the Bene Gesserit, oh, you really want this card. Unfortunately, the Bene Gesserit only have 5, and they need to bid 6 to win this card. So they'd have to borrow money. Now, I believe under the new rules, the Emperor can loan you money at any time for any reason, but I think they might have changed it so that other factions can't just lend you money. So I will need to double check that rule, but keep an eye out for that in the rule book. They have done some weird things with borrowing money, which I think might have changed some of the dynamics of the game. Anyway, again, the Harkonnens win, so they get that card. They get their free card, which, by the way, is another worthless card. That's not gone well for them. The problem they've got now is they've blown all their money, and that means they can't land any more troops on the planet, because to land troops on the planet, you have to pay the guild. So that's maybe an overly aggressive play by the Harkonnens, and they might regret that. So yeah, maybe they're going to have to try and get to that spice so they got more money for next turn. Anyway, let's move on. So the next player to bid would be the guild. The Atreides decide they really want this. They know that the Harkonnens have a shield, so they want this. They refuse to sell this information to anyone. They're like, oh, no, I'm not going to sell it. It's rubbish. No one wants it. Total bluff. Maybe the guild are a bit suspicious, so they go straight in with 3. The Bene Gesserit go, well, I'll go 4. The Atreides go 5. The Emperor's feeling pretty flushy, so the Emperor says, I'll bid 10. Unfortunately, all that money goes to the bank. He doesn't get to keep it, and he's very happy because he's now got the lasgun. Now, if he can do an alliance with the Bene Gesserit, for example, that could be really dangerous, because he could get the Bene Gesserit to tell an enemy faction, play your shield, and then he plays the lasgun and blows up. Now, just to remind you, if you look carefully at the iconography, a shield plus a lasgun equals big boom. So that's quite a nice feature. Anyway, who's next to bid? Oh, it's the Harkonnens. Well, they've got no money, so they're going to pass. The Atreides, snooper defense, that's really useful. They'll probably want this. So they bid, actually, Bene Gesserit go next. They bid 2, Atreides bid 3, Emperor bids 4, Fremen pass, Guild bid 5, and then everyone else basically passes. The Emperor could bid. Let's say they pass, they want the money, Guild pays 5 money, and they're very happy. They've now got poison and a shield defense. So the next player around would be the Bene Gesserit. So Atreides, they're pretty keen on getting hold of this. Maybe they don't tell people again, or maybe they say, I'll show someone, and they look and go, hey, Fremen, I think you might want this, have a look, pay me 1. The Fremen might refuse, and say, okay, fine, don't have it. Or they might say, hey, Guild, I'll let you look at this for 1, and the Guild go, yeah, sure. And they pay Atreides 1. So they now know that it's poison defense. Well, they already got a poison defense, so they don't care. But this is useful information. They now know whoever wins this card is going to have poison defense. Now, all of this you have to remember. Unless you're the Atreides, they can write this down. In fact, the Atreides are the only faction who's officially allowed to write anything down. Anyway, it goes round. The Atreides win for, let's say, 6 in the end, and they pay the Emperor. Then the final card, the bid-in is now the Atreides. Cheap hero, that could be useful. Maybe they bid 3. Goes round, eventually the Emperor wins, and they pay all that money the Atreides just paid them for that last card, and they get that. Now the Emperor has 1, 2, 3 cards. They can only bid for 1 more card. So yeah, that is a downside to winning lots of cards. Obviously, you could end up filling your hand with lots of worthless cards or duplicates of cards you've already got. So you've got to be a little bit careful. I've also possibly been overly aggressive with the bid-in. I'm not teaching you how to play the game from a best practice point of view. I'm just going through the mechanics, trying to show you stuff. So the next step of the game is revival and then movement. So we're now at the phase of movement. Now we check who the first player is. Well, it's the Emperor. So the Emperor has to think, does he want to beam down or not? Well, he probably doesn't. But before he does that, we need to check on the Bene Gesserit. They have a thing called cohabitation. So, for example, if this Bene Gesserit was over in Arrakeen, over here, if they're face up like this, then that means they're going to pick a fight. They can flip over, and on my version, it's just a blank disc. That means that they're not actually there. They effectively don't exist. So they would have to decide whether they're going to coexist or not. But anyway, once they've done that, we check who the first player is. As I mentioned, it's the Emperor. And they've got to decide what to do. Now, they might spot that the Harkonnens spent most of their money, but they can't actually see how much money the Harkonnens actually have, because that's part of the secret information. Now, each player has a screen to hide the exact details of what they've got. Now, some information isn't secret. So, for example, how many cards you're holding in your hand isn't secret. However, what those cards are is a secret. Unless, of course, you're the Atreides who've kept close eye on what everyone's been doing. So if they've been very clever, might have worked out the Harkonnens have got no money. So they know they could potentially go into Carthage and try and wipe out the Harkonnens. But that's risky. The Harkonnens have a lot of treachery cards. They've got a lot of traitors. Do I, as the Emperor, want to beam myself in and start a fight? Now, often with the Emperor, you sit back, you gather a lot of money, and then you beam in and try and win the game. And maybe you try and force an alliance. Now, alliances, by the way, they happen normally in the spice phase because one of the spice blow cards is the worm card or the Shai Hulud. And when you do that, it triggers something known as a nexus, which is basically a fancy way of saying you can form alliances. It also gives the Fremen some special abilities to ride the worms around, causing chaos. So, as the Emperor, I've now got to decide, do I want to commit my forces right now? Now, if I beam down, it costs me 2 spice to beam 1 disc to anywhere on the planet. However, if I beam into these strongholds, you get a discount because effectively you're using the spaceports, I guess. So you actually only pay 1 spice. So what they could do as the Emperor, they could actually choose to beam down their Sardaukar forces. Now, these are my version of these yellow fighters. These guys are double strength against everyone apart from the Fremen. So I could beam down 5 guys, costing me 5 money, which I would pay to the guild. And these 5 guys would count as 10 guys. Now, there's only 10 guys actually in the stronghold over there. So let's say I'm a really silly, overly aggressive player, and I've got loads of money. So I'm going to beam down 13 strength, 8 people into Carthage. So there you go, I've beamed down 8 people. I need to pay 8 spice to the guild. And the Harkonnen player's absolutely fuming now because he's potentially going to lose people because 13 people against 10 people, I can't win. However, there are shenanigans that can occur, and we'll talk about that in the next phase, the combat phase. Now, at this point, the Bene Jesuits, they can choose to send along an advisor. So I can't beam down like this, but I can beam. So effectively I don't exist. So I'm thinking, well, they might wipe each other out. I'll beam down as an advisor. And remember, an advisor doesn't exist, but they effectively aren't even on the map. However, at certain phases, I can flip them face up to become fighters, and suddenly I'm there. So I choose to do that. I can now, as the Emperor, move. Now, because I've beamed down into a stronghold with this special icon you can just about see here, the Ornithopter, I can effectively instantly move 3 spaces. Now, normally you can only move 1 space. The Fremen can move 2 spaces. People who control Arrakeen or Carthage can move 3 spaces. And in this version of the rules that Gale Force 9 have done, you just have to have a disc present in the stronghold to move 3. You might think, the Bene Gesserit can move 3. Well, they're not actually there. Remember, they're an advisor. Effectively, they don't exist. So both the Emperor and the Harkonnens, by being in Carthage, can move 3 spaces, as can the Atreides because they're in Arrakeen. So we're going to have a fight here. But before we do that, we move on to the next player. So now it is the Kremens' turn. So what they're going to do is they're going to march on from the south, and they're going to appear over in this location over there. So as you can see, I've effectively beamed on by walking onto the planet. I'm inside my white line. These guys can move as 1, so I'm going to move them 2 spaces, 1, 2, and I'm actually going to move all of them. So I've actually now secured this stronghold here, making it hard to get in. Now, I didn't beam down, so strictly speaking, the Bene Gesserit, I believe, can't appear on the False Wall West with me, so that's a little bit annoying, but there you go. Now at this point, the Spacing Guild could take a go, or they can choose to wait, because remember, the Guild can go whenever they want. In fact, they could have gone before the Fremen and the Emperor, but I've decided they're going to go last this turn, by the way. So They say, no, I'm going to wait. So next is the Harkonnens. They say, I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to see how this fight goes, trying to pretend they haven't run out of money. Well, yeah, they have. So that's why they don't do anything. Then it's the Bene Jesuits. So the Bene Jesuits at this point could choose to beam down some forces. They're not going to. They're just going to take advantage of the free ride they get as an advisor. And then, yeah, it's the Atreides go. Now the Atreides have a look, think, oh, this is interesting. Stuff's going down. I might want to go get that spice. So they're going to pay 4 money to the guild to beam down 2 guys. So they've got 4 money. They pay that to the guild. Where have I put my guild cards? There they are. So the guild now have 4 money, and the Atreides can beam down 2 guys because they're beaming into the desert directly onto that spice blow. Now, because they control Arrakeen, 2 guys allows them to pick up 6 spice. There is 6 spice there, so as long as no one else beams in there, that's fine. Now, the guild are annoyed because they were thinking of going after that spice, but they're not going to now. Because the Atreides are going there, they don't want to fight, so they're actually going to pass as well. So once the Atreides are on the map, that's it for the movement phase. So this is the situation here. Everyone's gone, and as you can see, the Emperor and the Guild haven't done anything, and this is often a tactic I've seen both the Emperor and the Guild do. They just sit and wait, bide their time, and then pounce when the time is right. However, the Emperor has been very aggressive this game and has picked a fight with the Harkonnens. So we check who's going to be fighting. We then resolve combat in player order. So we do the Emperor's fights first, then the Fremen, then the Guild, then the Harkonnen, then the Bene Gesserit, then the Atreides. Well, the Emperor goes first, and we've got a fight up there for the Emperor. So in this phase, a lot of thinking's going to happen. Now, the Harkonnen knows the Emperor bid really highly for a card, so he might be suspecting that a lasgun has been used. He might be suspecting that, maybe it's, I don't know, some other special card. But Family Atomics, the lasgun, and I think there's another card which I can't remember. Oh, yeah, the Gola card. They might be ones worth bidding for. So a little bit nervous. What do I want to do? Now, I know the Beast Raban is safe and is not going to betray me, so I might decide to play him. So he's worth 4 points. Now, I've got 10 guys there. So if I sacrifice my entire force and play the Beast Raban, I've got a strength of 14. Now, unfortunately, that's going to go up against a strength of 13 if the Emperor dials all of his units. Now, the Emperor might not choose to do that, so I now need to do math. So I know that if I play this 4, if the Emperor plays a 2 strength leader and all of their forces, and I dial all of my forces, I win. So I might try and kill their leader. So I might say, well, tell you what, I'm going to play a poison card. That means I'm going to kill his leader. So I might choose to play the beast, the leader. If I kill his leader, I'm winning by 1 if I dial all my forces. That's not the best. So maybe I want to try and keep my leader alive. And I think, well, tell you what, why don't, maybe they're going to play poison against me, so I'll play a poison card. Or maybe I think, hey, I'm going to lose this fight. So tell you what, I won't do that at all. I'll chuck in my 1 strength leader, because I'm going to lose this anyway. And I'll chuck in my 2 worthless cards to get rid of them. Yeah, let me do that. It doesn't really matter what I dial. If I lose everyone. Now, the way combat works is whatever number you dial here, you lose. Regardless of whether you win or lose, you lose that many people. However, the real twist in the tale is if you lose the combat, you lose everyone. Doesn't matter how many you've dialed, just everyone dies. So let's say that's what the Harkonnens do. They've worked out mathematically, oh my god, I'm going to lose. So I'm just hoping that the Emperor is going to play one of the traitor cards that I can do. Now, the Emperor's been really, really cunning. He's going to play his cheap hero because he's worried about being betrayed. He's going to play his lasgun to guarantee he kills the Harkonnen player, and then he's going to play his Karama card to say, hey, Harkonnen, I'm going to deny you the ability to use your power to steal my leader if you win this combat. Or he might use it for something else. So anyway, he chooses to do that, and he chooses to dial in, let's say, I don't know, he's thinking, well, he could dial 10. So if I dial 10, I win ties because I'm the first player, or I'm the player who goes first, more accurately. So there you go. So I'm going to dial 10 guys. He can only dial 10 guys. I'm going to kill his leader. I don't have a leader. I'm preventing him stealing stuff. Happy days. So we put these down. We compare the totals. So the first thing is Lasgun kills the Harkonnen. He's dead, so he goes to the tanks. He's a strength 1 leader, so whoever wins the fight is going to get 1 spice. These cards do nothing. This card I get to keep. I win. All these cards come back to me as the Emperor. I have to sacrifice 10 guys, and the Harkonnens lose these 2 treachery cards. They just get discarded. And that's it. So 10 guys and everyone for the Harkonnens. So there you go. There's 10 strength for the Emperor and 10 strength for the Harkonnen. Now, that was pretty devastating for the Harkonnen. They lost Arakeen. They lost 10 guys. They lost their leader. But everyone now knows the Emperor has the lasgun. Now, if you've got a shield, you might try and goad the Emperor into fighting you and deliberately goad him into using the lasgun and then play your shield card and blow everyone up. So that is a strategy. Now, this is a pretty big setback, but it is turn 1, so there is a chance of getting these forces back. Unfortunately for the Emperor, he's going to have to pay big money to get these guys out. The Harkonnen get them a little bit quicker, but that's a pretty huge setback for the Harkonnen. They've got no spice, no forces. They are totally stuffed. So with all the combat done, we move on to the spice collection phase. There is only one place currently where there is spice, and the Atreides are there. Now, the normal process is for each token you've got, doesn't matter how strong they are, for each token you get 2 of these. But again, because of this location here, which you can see you get a bonus 3 spice for each token you collect, I get to get all 6 of these because I've got 2 tokens there and they collect 3 each. Now, in this phase, there are some areas that also earn a bonus amount of money. So the guild's going to get 1 money, the Atreides are going to get 2 money, and the Emperor is going to get 2 money. So that was pretty devastating for the Harkonnens because not only did they lose control of that area, they also lost the income from it as well. Now at this point, we check for game ending conditions. There is no game ending condition, so we move on to turn 2 and we continue as we just did. So that is pretty much how to play DUNE. Now there are some complications and you will need to read them, as I say, on the player card. So the Fremen have special shenanigans for appearing on the board and moving around. They also get to do what's known as Shai Halud. They have the special victory condition, and they also get to do fancy things when they have an alliance. Now, if we do the next spice blow, you'll see it's the funeral plane. But if we keep going, we might come across a worm, and it's probably right at the bottom. Let's flip. Yeah, there you go. There's a worm. So if we turn up this card, the worm appears at the last place. So let's say it's the funeral plane. So the worm would actually appear at the funeral plane, eating everything that's there. We then do making or breaking alliances. And as you can see, it then says keep going till you get another spice blow. And that can be really powerful because when you get alliances, that's where you get to share your special abilities. So the Fremen, you can help with worm protection and reviving forces. The Emperor, as you see, they're very rich, and their main advantage is you can share your great wealth and allow for extra revival. Now, I believe that's a tweak to this version of the rules. The Atreides, they get all sorts of shenanigans around bidding, move in, battle, alliances. You can use your battle ability. And also under the advanced rules, if they lose 7 forces, they get the Quizzic's Haderach card. That acts as like a proxy leader with a +2 strength, and that can be a pretty impressive card. The Spacing Guild, they've just got shipping shenanigans, and the Alliance ability allows them to basically discount shipping. The Bene Jesuits, they've got the prediction, spiritual advisors, but also they've got a really nasty feature called the voice, which happens in the battle phase, which can be really, really nasty. Actually, is that basic? Yes, it's a basic ability, sorry, voice. So here you go. You may voice your opponent to do as you wish. So basically, like, they know the Emperor's got the lasgun. So in theory, they could tell them, play the lasgun. And then it's like, uh-oh, that could go horribly wrong. The Harkonnens, well, we didn't get to see their special advantage. If they'd won that fight against the Emperor, not only would they have potentially killed the Emperor's leader, but they would have got to steal a leader off the Emperor. That's pretty huge. So what I might do, I might try doing a second round just to give you a bit of an idea. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move the Storm 4 spaces. We're then going to shuffle this deck. And then the next phase, the Fremen check, and they know it's going to move 4 spaces. So with the Storm moving to here, that means the Fremen are going to get to go first. Now what the Fremen might choose to do is move these guys into here and try and win the game, because they will control 3 strongholds. So the Guild might want to think about going before the Fremen if they've noticed, or they might wait to see if the Fremen go in. If the Fremen do go in, then they reinforce and try and prevent the Fremen from winning. Equally, it might be they spot the problem and they are hoping for a worm to turn up, and then they form an alliance with the Fremen, and then they might try and take down the Emperor, who's looking pretty weak right now. Now, before we get excited about all of that stuff I was just talking about, we need to do a spice blow. So the spice blow, we noticed earlier, was going to be in the Great Flat. Now, the Atreides knew this, and they're obviously going to be going after that. So that's 10 spice in that location. However, they don't know how far this storm's going to move. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unfortunately, the storm could move 6, and if it does, they're definitely going to be wiped out. If it moves 5, they might just about get away with it. If it moves 4, they're probably safe. So that's a little bit of a worry. So they might only want to send those 2 guys who are already on the board over there to try and steal some spice. And if they die, hey, well, they die. If they don't die, well, great, they can maybe move them onto the mountainous region. But equally, they might look on the board and think, I got problems. So they now need to start thinking, do I want to make sure I don't lose the game this turn? Do I want to go for the spice? Well, I think the Guild are going to try and keep themselves safe. So they'll probably be thinking, hey, I've been eyeing up that spice. I think we might go to another turn. And these are where the game gets really complex. All these little strategies of who's got what cards and who's going to move where, and is the game going to end this turn? And sometimes you think the game's over this turn and it can go on for another hour. So that's where the game gets really interesting. It's that sort of high level play where the game really comes to life. Anyway, let's get the spice on the table, and then we move on to the treachery bidding phase. So I've checked and everyone is able to bid. So we're going to have 6 cards to bid on. But before that, we check for Chame Charity. Well, the Harkonnen request and get Chame Charity, and the Bene Gesserit request and get it, even if they're not due it. So everyone has got at least 2 spice. The Atreides look at the top card. It's a crysknife. They're not really that fussed by the crysknife. They've already got a projectile weapon. They will check their little list to see who's got what. And they might think, well, hold on. The Fremen don't have a projectile weapon. The Bene Gesserit don't have a projectile. Well, no, the Bene Gesserit do have a projectile weapon. It's the Guild who don't have a projectile weapon, and I don't think the Emperor's got one either. So maybe the Emperor might want this. So they might say, "Hey, Emperor, do you want to look at this card? Cost you 3." And the Emperor says, "Yeah, tell you what, I'll look." The Emperor now knows that it's a crysknife, so they might want to bid on this. So who's going to be the first bidder? Well, it starts off with the Fremen. Fremen bid 1. Guild bid 2. Harkonnens, well, they can't bid 2. The Bene Gesserit, they bid 3. The Atreides pass, and the Emperor bids 5. And everyone else decides, I'll just let him have it. So he's now on 3 cards, and he has to give 5 spice to the bank. So then we get the next card. Now the Atreides really wants this. He doesn't really think the Emperor's going to use this right now because of the fact that he's in Carthage, and blowing up the shield wall would make all these areas, as you can see here, vulnerable to the storm. So he might say, hey Emperor, do you want to look at this card? It'll cost you 3. Emperor says, no, I'll pay you 2. And the Atreides goes, yep, fine. And the guild might say, hey, can I look at it for 2? And they say, no, it's going to cost you 4. Anyway, everyone wails and gnashes their teeth. And it's actually going to be the guild to go first. So they go, tell you what then, I'll just bid 3. Goes round. Everyone sort of passes till we get back to the Emperor. The Emperor bids 5. So suddenly everyone's thinking, oh, this must be a good card. So the guild thinking, well, I can't bid 5, so I'm going to have to pass. The Bene Gesserit can bid 5. They could actually bid 7. So they bid 7. The Emperor thinks, hey, that's really annoying. Do I want them to have it for that much, or do I want to pay? And they think, actually, 7 money would be good for me. So they let the Bene Gesserit have that. Atreides makes a note of that. Yeah, family atomics now with the Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserit's got no more money, so she's going to have to pass now. And I think it's now the Harkonnens' turn to bid. So they bid 2. Bene Gesserit have to pass because they got no money. The Atreides, they're thinking, well, this could be quite useful. But equally, the Harkonnen can't make use of this right now, but of course they could keep it for later and they will get an extra card. And they're on 1, 2, 3, 4. They'll be on 6 cards if they get this with their free bonus cards. So they're like, tell you what, I'll bid 3. And that means the Harkonnen can't bid. The Emperor, he decides to bid 4. And the Harkonnen say, tell you what, have it. So everyone else passes. The Emperor pays 4 and cursing. They didn't really want that card. And I think that's their handful. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. They can't bid anymore now, the Emperor, so they're a bit stuffed. It then moves round to the Fremen. They bid 2. That cuts out the Harkonnen. They're really upset. And we go on round, and let's say the Atreides decide to get this for 4. So they pay the Emperor 4 money, and they've got the poison card. This card goes to, let's say, the Fremen for 2. And then finally, the Harkonnen win this for 1. They get their free card. Atreides don't know what this card is. It's the Truth Trance. Now, this is a fantastic card. So ask one player any single question, which can be answered yes, no. So, do you have the las gun? Do you have any money? Do you wish to attack Carthage? And whatever you answer, you have to actually do. So it's Truth Trance. That's a really cool card. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 more cards for the Fremen, for the Harkonnen, and their hands are full. 2 more cards for the Bene Gesserit. 1 card for the Atreides. 2 cards for the Fremen, and 2 cards for the Guild. So that's the sort of hand state, and you as a player would know that. You could say how many cards in hand. You can't say what are the cards, remember, but there are certain bits of information that are private and certain bits of information that are public. So anyway, that is all the bid-in done. So we now go to Revival. Now, the Harkonnen automatically get 2 free guys. They'd like to get more, but they've got no money, so that's all they're going to take. The Emperor only gets 1 free guy, and equally, they can only take 1 Sardaukar out of the tanks at any one time, but they could take out up to 3 guys, so they're going to pay 4 spice to get the other 2 regular troopers out of the tanks and put them back into their reserves. So that's the revival phase. So now it's the movement phase. So at the moment, it's the Fremen to go first. So the guild have to decide, do they want to go in first, or not? Well, the Fremen don't pay to come on, so they're not going to get any money. So maybe they want to wait a bit to see if anyone else beams down. The problem they could have is obviously other people might not beam down, and then they end up with no money. And if the Fremen march maximum troops in, then they might have issues there. So they've got to think really carefully. So first things first, the Fremen decide to move in 3 guys, and let's just remind myself how far the storm's going to move. It's going to be moving 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, that spice is going to get taken out next turn. So they go, oh, do I want the spice? Oh, I'm not sure. No, I think I need to attack the guild. So tell you what, I'll move some guys in ready to get that spice. So they sneakily move these guys in here as their sort of beaming action. Then they decide to pick a fight with the guild. Why not? So they move in there. So that now gives the guild a problem. So the guild decide, I'm going to wait. It's normally going to be their turn. So it's the Harkonnens go. Now the Harkonnens know the Emperor has a lasgun. So they decide to pay a 1 token and beam down 1 solitary guy into Carthag. The Bene Jesuits send a guy to advise the Harkonnens, or a lady I should say, they're all women, the Bene Gesserit, to advise. So now the Bene Gesserits go, they could choose to move someone. They're thinking, let's move closer to the Siege over on the far right there, but they can only move 1 space at a time, which is a real pain, but also rather sneakily it means they can actually set off the family atomics if they need to. But only the Harkonnens potentially know that, maybe the Emperor, because he did pay for that information as well, and it's like, oh, that could be bad. Anyway, they're not thinking about that, they're more excited about what's going on. They might have missed that little detail. They hopefully are good enough to remember that. So we then move around to the next player, which is the Atreides. They're relatively okay. I don't think they need to beam anyone else down, but they do want that spice, so they're going to move those 2 guys into the spice fields. So the Atreides have moved their people, so it's now the Emperor to go. Now, does the Emperor want to reinforce that battle? Now, he knows he's got the las gun. He knows the Bene Gesserit have the family atomics. He might be thinking, actually, I think the Harkonnens are thinking of trying to blow me up. So maybe I don't want to be here, but equally maybe I want to reinforce. Now let's say they're not really paying attention, so they pay 4 money to the guild to beam 4 strength of guys in. So let's get them dropped on the table. Now at this point, they've beamed 4 more guys in, so they've got more guys than they need. Now bearing in mind they're thinking shenanigans might be going on, they might decide that as they're in this area here, they can move 3 spaces. They might decide, hey, let's move a load of guys out of here. They've also noticed that potentially the Fremen can win this turn. So they aggressively make a move on the Fremen, and they're going to move into this Siege over here, which is 1, 2, 3 areas away. Now you might ask, why didn't they just beam down into there? Well, the reason is they wanted to move that guy over there, and they wanted to think and throw people off, so they beamed down there, they had a think, maybe they had a bit of table talk, and someone said, hey, the Fremen are going to win this turn. He went, you're right, so he marched over there, leaving 2 guys here to hopefully win this battle. Now at this point, it's a bit of a problematic turn for the guild. They've got to decide, do they want to beam more guys down to defend their siege against the Fremen? And they might be thinking, well, what have the Fremen got? Can they do anything against me here? So they check their traitor. Well, they've only got Fade. They don't actually know who the traitor is for the guild. It's Gurney, by the way. So the Fremen are actually wanting to pick a fight with the Atreides, but you know, if they can win the game without taking on the Atreides, that's a great move. So yeah, what's the guild going to do? Numerically, they in theory could beat the Fremen. Now none of those Fremen are the Fordaken, so they only fight at strength 1, so it's 3 versus 5. So that's a difference of 2. Now the best fighter for the Fremen is Stilgar, who fights at strength 7. So if they check their leaders, they've got to think, oh, how powerful is my leader? So the best leader for the guild is 5. So the strongest combat strength for both sides is 10. Unfortunately, the Fremen would win ties. So they might decide to pay 1 and beam, actually no, pay 2 and beam 2 extra people in so they can dial maximum dudes -1 and win the fight. So this is the situation. We've got 7 guild versus 3 Fremen. We have 2 versus 1 for the Emperor and the Harkonnen, and 5 versus 5 over there for the Emperor. However, slight problem. The Sardaukar, who are normally worth 2, against the Fremen are only worth 1. So I just need to check that stack. Okay, so doing a bit of retcon, we left the Sardaukar here, strength 2 versus 1, and we got 5 regular dudes against 5 regular dudes. So checking the turn order, Fremen go first, and they're in 2 fights. They've now got to make the really big decision, which fight do they want to do first? Now they don't have any traitors for the guild or the Emperor. The Emperor doesn't have any traitors for the Fremen, and I don't think the Emperor has. Well, who's the Emperor got? Let me remind myself. The Emperor has himself, so he knows he could use Hasmir safely to win a fight as long as he can keep his guy alive. So what he might do, he might play the Lasgun plus Hasmir plus a cheap leader to guarantee a win. The only problem with that is he doesn't know it, but both of the people he's fighting have a shield. So if he plays the Lasgun without knowing it, he might lose. So he might think, well, I know people know I got the Lasgun, so I won't use the Lasgun. I can't use the Hajar, that's pointless. So maybe this is what I'll go in with. Now, which fight do I want to win? Well, if I dial max dudes to try and wipe out the Fremen, maybe I can do this, and then Fenring's alive for my next fight. The only problem is, once you use a leader, he's out of the round because he's sort of tired. He can't be in 2 places at once, effectively. So I can use him next turn, but I can't use him in the fight against both the guild and the Fremen. And this debate's going on with the other people. Now, the problem for the Emperor is if he picks a fight over on the left there against the Fremen and loses, then that's not good. So basically, do I want to use as the Fremen Stilgar against the Emperor, or do I want to use him against the guild? Now, bearing in mind the guild, they've got pretty weak guys. Now, it might be they go with Staban, who's a strength 5 guy, and that is going to be a total strength of 12. So it's possible I can't win the fight against these guys. So I need to take him down. But maybe if I send Stilgar again with a cheap hero and a shield, and I hope that I don't lose the fight. So let's say that's what I do, and I'm going to commit all 3 guys to the fight. This is basically just to weaken the guild, and hopefully I might even win. So there you go. That's my battle plan for them. Now the Fremen, they've already decided, not the Fremen, where have they gone? Fremen. So after much thinking, the Fremen decide to fight the guild first. They're going to send Stilgar and a cheap hero, and they don't want to tip off the Emperor that they've got a shield, so they're not going to use any defense. The guild, they've decided to use Staban and a poison defense, and they've got to decide how many troops. Now they know Stilgar plus 3 guys is 10, and their leader is 5, and they're hoping to keep him alive, but they don't know if they can keep him alive. So do they dial 10 guys or take a chance? So the Fremen are going to win, so they're going to bid 6. So they choose to bid 6, which means they should win by 1 as long as their leader doesn't die. So they Go with that. We compare totals. No leaders die. Guild win, wiping out the Fremen. However, Stilgar has not been attacked by a weapon. He doesn't die. And unfortunately, the cheap hero does, because he was used in combat and the Fremen lost the fight. But all these cards come back to the guild. Stilgar comes back. We lose 3 troops and 6 troops. Now it's still the Kremens' turn, and they need to fight up in their home territory. They can't use Stilgar because Stilgar's already been used. So they're going to use Chani, and they're going to dial 5. This does mean they're going to lose all of their people, but they've got a strength of 11 versus the Emperor, who has 5. Now they're going to use the projectile defense, because if the Emperor uses his lasgun, well, you know, it's not going to be happy days for anyone in that location. So knowing that the strongest result is 11 for the Fremen, the Emperor's now thinking, well, maybe I'll use a cheap hero to try and protect my leader. I'll use Hasmir because I know he can't betray me. And they know I've got the lasgun, so I'm going to use the crysknife and kill their leader, and that would be good. So we reveal, we've both dialed 5, so everyone dies. The projectile bounces off the shield. The cheap hero has been used and would be discarded. However, it's effectively a tie. The problem with a tie is that effectively that means the Fremen win. So actually, both of these cards are discarded by the Emperor. The leader doesn't die. He comes back to the Emperor. The Fremen get to keep all their cards, and everyone gets wiped out because we actually dialed 5 for both factions. Now, I should mention an advanced rule. If I was to actually dial this, it would be like 4.5. Now, the reason for doing that is there is something called advanced combat. I don't like it. Basically, you have to pay spice for your armed forces. If you don't, they fight at half strength. If you're the Fremen, you don't have to pay for that. So that's an advantage that the Fremen have been given to stop them as a poor faction from being denied their ability to fight. It's, in my opinion, unnecessarily complex, but I thought I'd best mention it because I haven't mentioned it yet. Anyway, let's get everyone who died back in the pool over here. So as you can see, the tank's getting pretty full up, and we now need to check, is there any other fights? Well, I missed the Emperor. The Emperor should have fought the Harkonnens. That should have happened before the Fremen fight, so let's get that dealt with now. These things actually happen in real play. Try and avoid it. It can really change the battle because of which leaders you do and don't use. Now, the Emperor can't use Hasmir, so he could use Caed, Arasham, Berseg, Bashar. Now, the strongest leader of the Harkonnen is strength 6, so the maximum number that can be dialed is 7, effectively, by the Harkonnen. So Captain Arasham would be a tie. Ties go to the Harkonnen. So I want to use Hasmir, but I can't because I've already used him. So maybe I'm thinking, hey, I think they might use a shield defense against me. So there I'm in an R in what to do. And then, bam, truth trance. Emperor, are you going to play the lasgun in this fight? Now I have to decide what I'm going to do. Now if I say no, I now cannot use the lasgun. So I got to decide, do I use the lasgun or not? Now I might think, hey, I don't mind losing that guy. So I say yes. So now we know that the Emperor is playing the lasgun. So if the Harkonnens play a shield, everyone's going to die. Because the Emperor now knows this, he thinks, well, he's going to try and blow me up. So I'll play my lowest guy, maybe. Yeah, let me play a Bashar. So he thinks, oh, that's it, I'm going to get blown up. So the Harkonnens, well, the maximum they can dial is 1. Or they could dial 0, I suppose. So let's say they dial 0. They're not going to, you know, they're hoping they might win this fight. And they think, well, I now know that if I play a leader, I'm going to die. Do I have a fake leader? No, I don't. So I'm going to have to sacrifice one of my leaders. So, yeah, let me play Nefford. He's only strength 2. So if I lose him, who cares? I got these worthless cards. So maybe I chuck in a worthless card. Now I've got to decide, do I want to try and kill the leader of the Emperor, or do I want to use a shield? Well, tell you what, maybe the Emperor thinks, actually, tell you what, I'll rather than play that guy. Yeah, no, he is the weakest guy. Yeah, he will play him. So, yeah, maybe, you know, I'm tempted to play this to wipe everyone out, including the Bene Gesserit, which would be really good. But that means that Atreides could sweep in for a victory, so that might actually be a bad card to play. So I decide instead to bluff and use the poison card. So we flop down. The Emperor kills my leader, so he's dead straight away. 2. So that's 2 spice into the combat pool for whoever wins. My poison card kills the Bashar. That's another 2 into the combat pool of dead leaders. The cloak does nothing. And 0 versus 2, victory for the Emperor. The Emperor gets to keep his las gun. He gets 4 spice. And everyone apart from the Bene Gesserit dies. Collection, the Atreides get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So nice little collection for the Atreides. We check the win condition. No one can win. We're on to turn 3. Spice moves 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wipes out all of the spice and these 2 Atreides, because everything in this sector gets blown away if it's in sand. The next area to have spice is the Red Chasm. 8 spice goes over there. So we do Charity, so the Bene Gesserit automatically get 2. The Harkonnens are a bit poor, so they get 2. The Fremen are poor, they get 2. And that's it. So now we're on to bidding, so we check 2 cards, 2 cards. Atreides, 1, 2, 3 cards. Fremen, 1 card, 2 cards. Yeah, everyone can bid, so we get 6 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Atreides, check out, and it's the Talaxi Gola. This is really valuable, and the first player is going to be Harkonnens. They just bid 2. It goes round to the Bene Gesserit, they can't bid. The Atreides, they want this, they bid 5, so the Emperor bids 6. Anyway, after a bit of banter, they decide, and the Gola goes to, let's say, the Emperor, and the Emperor gets it for 8, let's say. The next card's the Mauler Pistol, so this would be a good card for most of the players, to be honest. So the Harkonnens went first, so it's Bene Gesserit, they bid 1, the Atreides bid 3. Let's see. Yeah, I think the Guild is going to go 4 and no one else wants it, so the Guild pays the Emperor 4. They get a Mauler Pistol, they've now got an attack. The Gom Jabbar poison weapon, that would be really useful. It's the Atreides bid, they bid 3. No one else can bid apart from the Emperor. The Emperor has, let's see, 3 cards. So they say, tell you what, I'm going to bid 5. The Atreides go, fine, you have it for 5, because they know they can just win any card from now on. So the next player to go would be the Emperor. They can't, so we go to the Fremen. Fremen bid 1. Goes round, Harkonnen bid 2, the Atreides take it for 3. Then we got Poison Weapon. So the next person to bid would be the Guild. They bid 1. Bene Gesserit bid 2. Atreides, are they on 4 cards? 1. Let's have a look. They're on 3, so they could bid for it, but they... Oh no, they do have 4 cards, so they can't bid for it. So, nor can the Emperor. So, yeah, that goes to the Bene Gesserit for 2, who pay the Emperor. And then the final person to bid for it, let's say, is, again, the Bene... yeah, no one. So it just gets discarded. Okay, now, possibly, the Harkonnens would have gone for it. So let's say the Harkonnens pay the Emperor 2, actually. So they get the shield and a secret card, which is a worthless card, the Kulon, or Donkey. Now, there is a special rule called the Krama card, and that card is currently in the hand of the Harkonnens, so they might choose to use it. Now on page 14 you've got the once per game abilities, and the Harkonnens ones are nasty. You may use a Krama card to take, without looking at, any number of cards up to the entire hand of any one player, and for each card you take you must give them a card in return. So they choose to give 3 cards to the Emperor, discarding their Krama card. Now by using that, they now have a chance of getting the lasgun off the Emperor. So they've discarded, they've transferred these 3 cards to the Emperor, and the Emperor's got 4 cards. So let's shuffle these cards, and let's say they take 1, 2, 3 cards. They got the lasgun. So now, not only have they got the lasgun, they've got the Gom Jabor, and they've got the Talexi Gola. That's fantastic. So they instantly use that, discarding it, and they get 5 guys out of the tanks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, because they've used their Krama special ability, my reading of the rules is that's it. They can never use that ability for the rest of the game. And there has been a lot of confusion about that, but that's my reading of it. Now, that doesn't mean they can't play Krama cards. They can play a Krama card. They just can't play their faction-specific special ability for playing a Krama card. Now, does anyone else have a Krama card? Because some people did. I think they've all gone. So yeah, that was an awesome use of a Krama card by the Harkonnens. They got effectively the lasgun. They also got the ability to blow themselves up with the shield, so they could just go in against the Atreides, who are looking pretty strong, and level the playing field. Happy days. And the Emperor is absolutely fuming. He's just lost his awesome card. Right, so that was all the treachery bidding. So now we go to revival, which I think we did last time. So let's say we've done all that because I made a bit of a gaffe earlier. Then we go to movement, and the first player to go is going to be the Harkonnen. They've got no money. They might want to try and borrow, but no one's going to give them money. They're treacherous swines. So this is why the Harkonnens might not wanted to have bidded for that card, but it was worth it, I think, for them, as long as the game doesn't end this turn. Bene Gesserit, they need to look and think what's going on. Well, if you remember correctly, they predicted on turn 7 the Guild would win, so they want to make sure nothing happens. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to stop people from picking a fight in Carthage, so they choose to make them active warriors. And they might want to beam some guys down there. So 1, 2, 3, 4. They're going to beam 4 people down, so they pay the Guild 4 spice. Now, because they've moved into Carthage, they've now got 3 movements. So for their move, that guy who's been hanging out on the by the Polar Sink, they're going to move in against. They're going to move them in against the Guild. 1, 2, 3. Now they could choose to coexist, but they're not going to. At this point, the Atreides are fuming. They were going to win, but they can't. So they now need to beam people down. They've only got 2, so they'll spend 2, giving it to the Guild, and they'll beam 2 people into the siege. So 2 guys in there. They could move these guys up to 3. So they've got to decide, do they want to do that? Do they want to do that? Maybe they move 4 guys over to here to reinforce there. Now everyone's thinking, why are they doing that? That's stupid. Well, what they don't know is the Atreides now play the Hajar card. That gives them an extra move. So those guys go and reinforce the siege. Well, that's caused a little bit of kerfuffle, hasn't it? So the Emperor's now thinking, damn it. I was going to do all sorts of shenanigans, but maybe I can't now. But they do have a load of guys they could beam down. So they're going to beam down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys. They're making a big power play here. They're an aggressive, naive player who's trying to win it every turn. So 9 guys are going to beam down, and they're going to try and take out the Atreides now. So the Emperor's beamed in 9 guys, but they're not 9 strength, because 2 of them are Sardaukar. So 11 strength versus 6. The Fremen can go now. Well, they got a bit of a problem because they were going to try and move in and reclaim their territory. But that's gone a bit wrong for them because all the other big factions have gone in. But they're looking and thinking, well, the issue I've got now is I know the storm's going to be moving. And if I'm out in the sand, I could end up dead. I need to somehow get myself shifted across to the other side of the table to try and deal with stuff. Or I could try and go all in against the Atreides. The problem is they might have to wait. So what they're going to do is they're going to move in a load of guys into, I think it's called the Plastic Basin, just above the Atreides in their home territory. So the Fremen drop in 5 guys here, and then these guys move 2 via the Wind Pass to come and reinforce, ready to move in there or to move across into Carthage. Now the guild's been patiently waiting and they're thinking, hey, what's going on here? The Bene Gesserit have moved in on me, but they've not really sent many forces in. What are they planning on doing? That just doesn't make any sense to me. Well, tell you what, let's pay 4 money to beam in 8 guys because they get discount and reinforce my siege. So after this rather aggressive round, we've got the guild down here, the Atreides and the Emperor here. The Atreides are being threatened by the Fremen. Fremen sitting tight here, guild here. So at the moment, the Fremen could possibly win at the end of the game if they could just get into here. Atreides, if they could kick out someone in one of these other sieges, they could win the game. The Bene Gesserit are just trying to stall for time. The Emperor and the Harkonnen forces are really hoping for an alliance, I think, to try and jump in on a winning side, because at the moment they look like they're out the game. So we're now on to combat, and we have to check, is the Harkonnen in any fight? No. Is the Bene Gesserit in any fight? Yes, they're up against the guild, so let's have a look at what they're going to do. Now, the guild have a bit of a problem. They only have one sort of attack, which is projectile, but they do have both types of defense. The problem is they're fighting the Bene Gesserit, and the Bene Gesserit can tell them what weapon to play and what defense to play, or rather they can tell them either to play a projectile or poison card, either for defense or attack more accurately. So the problem the guild have got is their leader could die. So they probably don't want to put in a decent leader. So they go for their rubbish leader, the guild rep. So they're going to be putting in the guild rep. Now, the problem is pretty much all leaders for the Bene Gesserit are worth 5. So that's going to be 6. So they're going to have to dial 5 people or kill the Bene Gesserit's leader. So they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So they think, tell you what, let's dial 6 to be sure. Guild rep. and they've got to decide what weapon to play. But before they do that, the Bene Gesserit can say, don't play a poison defense. And they're like, ah, damn it. So the guild, they know they can't necessarily win this. So they play just any old poison defense. And then they've got to pick a leader. Now, they don't have a worthless leader. So they're going to pick a leader. So they think, let's chuck in Lady Fenring. So the Bene Gesserit are going to kill the guild rep. The guild are going to lose 6 guys. The Bene Gesserit's going to be killed. It's a bit of a disaster. So they reveal the plan, and the guild can't believe it. They played Lady Fenring. The guild have Lady Fenring, a traitor. So, treachery. Lady Fenring is killed. The drug card is discarded. Nothing happens because it was an ambush. The leader doesn't die because he wasn't poisoned. The 6 guys who thought they were sent to their death don't die. It's an ambush. Brilliant result for the guild. Disaster for the Bene Gesserit. But they now know that Lady Fenring cannot be used against the guild, but it's safe to be used against anyone else. So, not a total disaster. And 5 spice for killing Lady Fenring goes to the guild. Guild's rolling in cash now. Fantastic. So that's the Bene Gesserit's fighting done. Is the Atreides in any fighting? Yes, they're up against the Emperor. Let's have a look at what they're going to do. The Emperor decides to go with a strength of 8 with Fenring for a total of 14 and poison defense, because they're pretty sure they saw some poison over by the Atreides. Maybe it was the Bene Gesserit. They can't really remember, but that's what they've decided to go for. So they're committing a total strength of 14. And that's because they've worked out that the Atreides probably can't beat them. So the Atreides decide to send in Lady Jessica, who's worth 5. Unfortunately, they can't remember what weapons there are, so they chuck in a cheap heroine just in case. And they decide to say, hey, Emperor, I have limited prescience. Tell me what defense you're playing. And they say poison. So they put in a projectile weapon, knowing that they can now kill the enemy leader. So how many people are they going to dial? Well, they know Hazmi is the strongest person with 6. So they're just going to dial 2. And that should be enough to win if they kill the leader, which they should do because they know that the defense is poison and they're playing projectile. The only problem is they might lose their hero, but they played their cheap heroine, or hero, which one is it? The cheap heroine. She's going to die, so Atreides win. All these cards are discarded because they lose. They lose 6 spice. The Atreides get 6 spice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Lots of money for the Atreides. The Emperor loses 8 people, and the Atreides lose 2. Sorry, just to clarify, the Emperor's lost everyone, the Atreides lose 2. That is combat for this round. There is no spice collection possible. Check for endgame. No one's won. Move on to turn 4. Now, I'm not going to play through a whole round. Effectively, the storm will move 1. The spice that's on the table stays put. There's a spice blow in the funeral plane, which is not where the storm would be, so it will appear. We're then going to do bidding. I think everyone can bid. We'll then do revival, where there's lots of people to revive. We're then going to do combat. The Fremen are probably movement and then combat. The Fremen are probably going to move in against the Atreides. They might actually go after Arrakeen because the Atreides are weak there. However, the problem for the Harkonnens is Atreides get to go first, and that could be a problem for them. And the Bene Gesserit are going to definitely want to try and stall out the game to get the guild to win, because basically the Bene Gesserit either win by themselves or wait for the end game condition to trigger, and then they go, guild, you thought you were going to win? Actually, I win, and stuff like that. So that's how the game goes. I think I've shown you enough there. Hopefully I've not made too many errors. If I have, please put it in the comments so people can learn from my mistakes. And there you go. That is sort of a guide of how to play Dune, plus you get to see the final version of my print and play copy of the game. The Bene Jesuits might be tempted with their 3 movement to blow up the family atomics if it looks like they're going to lose. Don't forget they've got that card. And of course the Harkonnens might be thinking of, hey, I'm going to wait for someone to be really strong, fly in and use the las gun and the shield and blow everyone up. With regard to the dead leaders, by the way, once all of your dead are in here, you can start reviving them from the tank. If your treachery cards run out, you pick up the discard pile, shuffle and re-go. Same with the spice. You're never really going to reshuffle the traitor cards. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So as I say, I hope you've enjoyed that. Until the next video, happy gaming.